Hello and welcome to another glorious read. I am your host, Aspen M. Sage. Let's get into it. First all, happy March 1st. It's a Saturday and it's sunny out here, at least for now. I mean, our weather has been changing so frequently here up in New England. Like yesterday, it was sunny, it was like near 40, and then it just dropped, and then we had like complete snow showers and it like covered everything. I couldn't see like more than 10 feet in front of me. And then it was gone again. And it was up to 40 and everything was melting and it was sunny. And that's how it is living here. Literally, the weather will change so that it doesn't know what it wants to do. But we're kind of like in that middle of a false spring a little bit. It's also maple season. So this is when we're going to start tapping our trees and getting fresh maple syrup. So yeah, it's an exciting time of the year. It's also the time of the year when I at least get fidgety enough that I want to start planting. And I know that I shouldn't start my seeds until at least April. I got one more month to go. And then I can start planting and getting ready for this year's gardens and what to grow and what to put where. But it's like getting exciting. That's just that time of the year, and of course now our 40-degree weather is so warm that we kind of want to just wear shorts and t-shirts. Where if it was this kind of weather in like November, we'd be bundled up and freezing. So enough about me rambling on about the weather. It is time to do this week's book review. So, we have been reading, or I've been reading at least, the Dragon Lord series. We did books 1 through 3. Now we're on book number 4, what's Kiss of Frost. This one definitely hit differently. It also started a lot differently. So, obviously, in the previous book, the king came out of the fire. His consort, who is also his mate, who is a half witchling, and of course their female dragon mate. It came to start with a female called witch named Georgina, or Georgie as they call her in the book, Blackwood, who is now the leader of her house, but her elders have said that they don't want her to be leading because she can't control her element, what is air. I'd never known air to be controlled, but according to she is supposed to be the daughter of two powerful air witches in the first place. So she's supposed to be like this prodigy of being able to control the wind and whatnot. The only problem is she says that wind is attracted to her. She loves it. It's a very playful spirit to her. But she can catch it, but she can't hold it. And she doesn't understand because her parents were able to control. So she has gone to the court of the dragons to talk to Cormac and to Niall to seek passage to the North Winds, or permission to enter the North Winds. The only problem is they said there's the ice dragon there who protects the North Winds, and good luck getting through it. Supposedly this ice castle eats people kind of thing. She goes, I just need to capture the North Winds to prove my worth to my elders because that's the quest they sent me on. So he's like, yeah, go ahead, but fair warning, there's an ice dragon up there and he will not be swayed. And she's like, oh, great. Yeah, that's exactly what I want to deal with. Um, as she's in this middle of this court, this another male comes in, another dragon. His name is Callum, and his Callum is a different type of dragon. I absolutely love Callum in this book. He's actually a demon dragon halfling. Um, and he ends up being an incubus. So he was supposed to be part of this royal guard that was reinstated, and so he walks into the room saying basically, "Sorry, I'm late for the party." Um, and he catches wind of George. Of course, Georgia also feels connection to him, and she doesn't know why, but it's a very intimate connection. Um, And it basically takes a quick turn where he's like, yep, you're mine, you're my mate, blah, blah, blah. And she's like, I don't even know you. Like, you can't just come up and spring that on me. And he goes, well, I hate to tell you, Buttercup, it's gonna happen. And he's like, of course, all this muster of lust that is building between them, all the other males that aren't mated are becoming very turned on as well in this big courtroom. And they're of course like, Callum, you need to get her out of here. So he whisks her away, and she feels obviously a lot of desire. And him being an incubus, he may not be the strongest little halfling among his dragon kind, but he can read not minds but pleasure. Again, being the incubus he is, he's able to read what people most desire, especially in the pleasure field. And she keeps seeing like um a shadow of horns. Like they're not actually there, but she could see like the shadow of the horns of the demon that he is. And where this one also plays a little different is um, her parents are not alive because witches like to steal each other's powers, but his parents are. What's kind of different because most of the parents in the previous books have not lived. His parents, however, are alive in the demon plane. So basically, right off the bat, in the beginning of the book, Callum and Georgie, they basically mate. She's like, "Oh yes, this is gonna hit so well with the Count elders," that she went to go ask permission to capture the North Wind and comes back, mated to a dragon, no less. Of course, her little dragon partner, Callum, he is very funny. I love him. He's such a little like kind of dorky-ish, kind of nerdy-ish, even though he picks on her. He is trying to be very helpful to her. He's like, I will do everything in my power to make sure that you make it. I will help you capture the Northwind. I will do anything you want because that's what you desire. Of course, being his ability, that's what he sees. He also sees every thought, dirty thought she has. And he's like, don't worry, eventually down the line after, we capture the Northwind and get you your head house seat, we'll find our second mate. So in this book, it is also different that it starts with a female and male character starting the mating. It is also very nice that it starts fresh. Like, according to all the other previous books, the other characters are older, except for like their female mates. These people, obviously being immortal, do not age. They're only in their 70s, 80s. Like they're young compared to everyone else. So they're very goofy. And it's kind of funny because I love what the author did is she put references of movies that grew up in that time period. Like so they grew up a lot of like the 90s and 80s movies like Princess's Bride and like Star Wars and stuff like that. So it's very cute, especially when it comes to Princess Bride because I love that movie. I think it's a really cute movie. Um, so yeah, it made me chuckle actually. And Callum is definitely one of those guys in the book who constantly makes references about that said movies in situations. He also makes words that don't make sense. And of course, Georgie is the one to correct him. But as they go on in the story, they end up going to the ice castle, which on this Arctic plain, which I guess not reached by humans. They come upon the castle, and before they even reach it, basically this pale blue ice dragon comes out of nowhere, fights them. Mostly Callum, and Callum tries his best to protect Georgie, and of course Georgie wants to fight back. But it comes to a situation where both characters basically get knocked out, and they get brought into the castle. Of course, that comes into our third character, Graeme, but it's spelled differently than the first Graeme. This one is like Graem, I believe. So he's also a very older dragon. His heart is made of ice, so he couldn't feel. He lost one of his mates. He lost his male mate. And so, where in this book, there's always or in the series, there's a portrayal. There was no betrayal in this book. Like, it was literally just this old dragon who had been part of this ice brotherhood. He was the last one. His only thing was to how to bring back his mate. He sees the ghost of his mate, and it constantly brings him, sorrow, even though he can't feel it. He always tries to call back his mate, trying to bring him back from the dead, blah, blah, blah. But he's also all of a sudden very interested in these two people that showed up at his castle. Graeme is also a halfling, even though he is ancient. He is an unseelie. He is also part fae of kind of like a winter fae. So he is able to hide and stuff. So he's kind of hiding in the shadows, watching these two people as he's like thinking these nasty thoughts about her and him, and then him and him. So, of course, Callum is the first one to rise, and he's looking around, and he's like, okay, we're here. He sees Georgie. He searches her, makes sure she's unharmed. And as he's looking around, he's like, calls out to the blue. He goes, I could, like, you're around here. Are you going to show yourself like, an actual man? Or are you a coward? And so Graham's like, how the hell did he know I was here? So he steps out and he goes, yeah, that's an unseen anything. He's just this cocky little guy. I love it. And he's like, how did you know I was, there? And he's like, oh, yes, because you had this thought. And he's like, how could you possibly know that? And then he goes, oh, you're an incubus demon kind of thing. And he goes, halfling. And it's just funny because then Georgie wakes up and they talk to each other. There's actually not a lot of spice in this book compared to the other ones. So there's still a lot of romantic scenes or a lot of thoughts. It's what it mostly is. It's not a lot of doing. So it's actually a lot of more of Callum and Georgie together, and then there's a few of Callum and Graeme together, and then there's the three of them. So it wasn't more spice like the previous books where it was like literally every few chapters. It was more of dirty thoughts of what they could be doing. So that was also a very nice change of pace. Of course, Georgie is coming to Graeme and saying, hey, I need passage to the North Wind. I have, the King Cormac's blessing to go through. And he goes, well, he has no pull up here. So it's a lot of back and forth. It's a lot of Graeme blocking them from going to the North Wind or to the Oracle, where they seek guidance. But it's also a lot of Graeme trying to fight his melting heart. And Callum and Georgina know that Graeme is their mate. Especially Callum, he is positive of it. He's like, this is what's happening. He goes, that old dragon with a heart of stone is our mate. I'm positive. And she goes, are you sure? Like, could you be wrong? And he goes, no, dragon bonds are never wrong. He goes, I absolutely know it. So it's a lot of also Callum trying to melt the dragon's heart, playing the, what we could be more. And there's Graeme just going like, I will put you over my knee. And he's like, please do. Like, it's a lot of like back and forth. There's a lot of fights between Callum and Graeme too. And of course, where Callum can read Graham's thoughts, he's like, you wanna, and he hates it. But they also use his ability a lot to tell each other what they're thinking. So he's like, I might not be the most powerful halfling, but he's like, I do have this ability to tell you what other people are thinking about you in a very intimate way. So he's very funny. Of course, as the story goes on, Graeme is still trying to search for how to bring his mate back. Of course, his mate's ghost still haunts him. And then after a while, there's a part where his dead mate, Hamish, comes back and says, it's time for me to go, and you found what you were looking for, blah, blah, blah. And I'm happy for you, but I must leave. And of course, that's when Graham's heart officially melts. He basically falls for Georgia and Callum, and it becomes an intimate thing where he's scared. He's supposed to be this ice dragon that's hard as stone, doesn't feel anything. He's intimidating. I've never met a more intimidated man that cries so often. He cries over his dead mate, what's understandable. He cries over um, the fact that he's melting. He cries over the fact that he could have lost Callum and Georgia when they tried going to the Oracle by themselves without his help. And he cries almost when Georgia falls. This man cries a lot. He cries even at the end of the book. Um, and she eventually just calls him her big, gentle old dragon. Like, he's just this gentle dragon. Um, so he's like, okay, finally giving into this mate bond. They become somewhat mated. Big intimate act. It's very nicely done, very sweet. But it's also very I'm trying to find the word for it. It plays in the mind well. It gets you to really think, especially with Callum's ability to read desires as he's just describing it, and then they act it out. But near the end of the book, they're finally like, you know what, we'll go see the Oracle. Even though, Graham's supposed to be protecting it, he's like, maybe since my heart melted, I can get back my original form and not be an ice dragon anymore. So as they make their way up to the North Winds, they have to ride on Graham's back. And of course, for Callum, he's like, this is humiliating. Like, I'm a dragon. I can do this. And he's like, this is emasculating and stuff. And Georgie's like, you'll be fine. You're used to being, he's like, just because I prefer being the submissive one to that said dragon doesn't mean I'm comfortable riding on his back in dragon form. So he makes a comedy skip at it. Graeme comes out, he's like, what are we laughing about? And she goes, Callum being Callum. And he goes, gotcha. I get where that's coming from. He's like, I can understand where those thoughts are probably. And he's like, oh yes. He's very sinister about it. So they go to the North Wind, and this whole thing happens to the Oracle. And Georgia's like, something's not right. Graeme knows something's not right. Callum definitely has like the heebie-jeebies, Scooby-Doo, freaking like, I need to get out of here. Like, he wants to run with his mates. And basically, Hamish arrives and says that basically Graeme failed and that he's the reason why, they're he's suffering and now he's dead and this and that, and it's all Graham's fault. And Graham's like breaking down. He's like, no, that's not true. You told me it was okay. And he goes, it was a test and you failed. And then Georgia realized that the wind behind this Hamish guy is not right. And she's like, immortals don't have ghosts. Ghosts are a human thing. And she's like, that can't be Hamish's spirit. So she basically says that he's lying and this or that, and he gets really mad. And then it turns into like she can release the wind that this Hamish has been controlling. It slashes around and it ends up being a woman. This woman is also Fae. She's a winter Fae who apparently has been deeply in love with Graeme. And it basically turns into that whole betrayal thing, or this whole thing where people are an enemy. She is actually the one to put Graeme through all this pain. And she even calls out Callum being like a weakling, like he can't do anything right. And he basically calls her out and be like, I can tell you Graeme has never loved you in the day of your life. He goes, and I know people's thoughts and desires. He goes, you've never even crossed his mind. Like, he goes, I know I'm not the strongest, but I can tell you what people desire, and I can tell you he didn't desire you. So she gets really mad. Something happens, I'm not quite sure. Or at least I don't want to tell you exactly what happens. But regardless, Georgia is not allowed to claim the North Wind. She makes it more of a deal with it to use its power, but not to cage it, because it did come up to her and tell her that it will not be caged. And she goes, I can respect that when it's not supposed to be caged. They also come up to Graeme and says, I can return you to Hamish. And they're like, he's like looking between, does he join Hamish or does he stay with Georgie and Callum? And he makes the right choice and stays obviously with the main characters. Because there was a time where I was like, I thought really deep down he was gonna say like, "Bye, I gotta be with my first mate," you know. And he does. Even the North Wind comes to, or the Oracle comes to Callum and says that you might not be the strongest, but you are the purest heartest. And he's like, "Thanks." Like he's just that little giddy kitty. He's like, "Thanks, I try." He's definitely a really cute character. So all in all, this book was a 5. The spice level was more on the 4.5 end than the 4.7 end. Like I said, Callum is just my favorite character because he's just so witty and just he's one of those guys that just like makes you want to like him anyway. He kind of just reminds me a little bit of one of my characters who is witty and likes to make jokes. Um, Even for they're both halflings, what's kind of cool, or half breeds. Um, so this book definitely was there. I like the difference of it. It was nice how it started. It's nice how it ended. I really wanted to savor this book. I was trying so hard to read slowly. I didn't want it to end, but at the same time, I'm like, I gotta finish it because there's still one more book left. And then that's going to be next week's review, guys, is the last in book of the series. That's going to be book number 5. And like I was hoping, it starts with a werewolf. So I'm excited. I want to know how it goes. Well, the female is the werewolf. Of course, the males are the dragons. And then after that, I think we're going to go back to a dark series or a dark romance or whatever you want to call it. Dark smut. Because I do enjoy the fantasy. I do like the tales. I do might go back through my TBR list to see what else is there. Um, I have had a lot of Dark Adeline popping up, and I've also had a lot of the Court of Thorn and Roses, I believe it is. So I don't know. Those are on my list, but I haven't brought myself to read them because they're so big. I wanted to read a lot of the smaller authors first. I might go back to one of the Lexi C. Foss books because I do enjoy her writing as well. But also the Celine, I can't remember the last name, but Celine's authors, the one who wrote Hunted, she's got another one that's named Standalone, so I would like to maybe read that one too. Or Stranded, correction, not Standalone, Stranded. But of course, reading these books also makes me want to write in mine. And of course, right now I'm actually redoing my book number 2 to make a second edition. It's going well, I hope, but it's hard when I'm the only one that reads it. So every time I'm like, yeah, I like it. It's good. It's good. And then I'm like, oh, this is junk. And then I'm like, oh, it's good. And then I'm like, nope, nope, this is crap. So it's like when I do art, I'm like, this is really nice. I like how it's turning out. I'm like, nope, I screwed it up. This is horrible. It's trash. So I hope everybody enjoys the rest of their Saturday. I hope that you go do something adventurous. Maybe take a walk on the beach if you have one. Go to the mountains. I know it's that weird weather. Maybe go shopping for those plants and seeds because spring. Yeah, planting gardens. Or even simple as like maybe adding a new house plant. Because they always say that having plants in the house, if you have pets, please get pet friendly. Um, Brings fresh air and good vibes into the home. So I do agree to that. I like to grow things also. But I hope everybody has a fantastic day. Go on an adventure, get yourself something nice, and enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you for joining me, and catch you next time. Bye bye.